السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أما بعد. Is everybody ready inshallah? Okay, Jamil inshallah. Alhamdulillah. So inshallah ta'ala, this is probably going to be the last session, so there's no more breaks. We're going to go one time until 7 p.m. and stop inshallah ta'ala at 7 p.m. bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And I know it might be hard, so I appreciate everybody staying as far as this, whoever joined in the middle, whoever joined at the beginning. And always remember, knowledge cannot be attained by a body that is relaxed. Knowledge cannot be gained by a body that's relaxed. So knowledge needs hard work. Like anything in life, everything needs you to work hard. Sometimes you have to sacrifice, you have to struggle, and you gain this high position of knowledge. Inshallah ta'ala. So we are now, or there's a lot of other things that we can cover in the subject of fasting, but we've covered a lot of the subjects of fasting. A lot of the details of fasting are covered in books of fiqh, and there's many programs by Knowledge College, by other programs, by other instructors. They explain this subject in great detail. Ustadh Yasir, he teaches Matan Abi Shuja', where he will go through, inshallah ta'ala, the chapter of Siyam, and he'll go through many details, inshallah. So I recommend you join that. Ustadh Abdurrahman Hassan also, he's teaching Bulugh al-Maram from the chapter of fasting, and the lesson is actually right after this lesson today, 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Inshallah ta'ala. So join that inshallah ta'ala for the details. So this is just an overview, but those lessons will give you more details inshallah ta'ala and answer all your questions. So this is fasting. And then there's fasting is of types. There's fasting that is haram, there's fasting that is makruh, and there's fasting that is permissible, jaiz. And so fasting is also of different types, and those books inshallah will cover. So we'll take the second topic, which is Zakatul Fitri. Is Zakatul Fitr. We have zakah, which is charity. Al-Fitr is because it's attributed to al-iftar, that we open our fast and we are no longer fasting. We're no longer fasting. And zakah is of two types. There's zakatul mal, and that's not what we're discussing here today. Zakatul mal is when you have a specific amount of money, it reaches a nisab, a threshold, and then you have to give it, and you have to give it on specific things, animals, money, etc. And you have specific conditions before you have to give it out. And that's not the type of zakah we're referring to here. We're talking about zakatul fitr, which is the zakah that you give after the month of Ramadan. And the scholars, they start off by saying, what's the wisdom as to why we have to give this zakah? Why do we have to give it in the first place? So who knows what the wisdom behind us giving zakatul fitr is? Why do we give zakatul fitr? Why do we have to give zakatul fitr? For others to enjoy and it's one of the pillars of Islam? No. So the zakatul fitr is not a pillar of Islam. Zakatul mal is, but not zakatul fitr. Like we said, zakah is of two types, and only zakatul fitr, zakatul mal is the pillar, to reduce poverty, distribute wealth, to get more reward if you do it in Ramadan. Very close, but nobody's really getting it. The answer is in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just hadith something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and it's narrated by Abu Dawud radiallahu anhu, or rahimahullah ta'ala, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, Zakatul fitri tuhratun lis-sa'im. Zakatul fitr tuhratun lis-sa'im. Zakatul fitr, it's a tuhra. It's a means of purification lis-sa'im, for the one who's fasting. For the one who's fasting, it's a means of purification. From what? من اللغو والرفث, from vain speech, excess speech, from bad speech. So it's number one is purification. No doubt, we're going to fast the month of Ramadan. And our fasting in the month of Ramadan is not going to be perfect. We're going to be mistake. There's going to be shortcoming. So Zakatul Fitr is to overcome those mistakes that we come, and a means of purification for those mistakes we come. So we get the full reward of Ramadan. So it's a means of what? Overlooking or compensating for the sins that we come and the mistakes that we make in the time of fasting. That's number one. And number two is طعمة للمساكين. It's food for the poor people. The masakin, the poor people who don't have any food, it's a means for them to eat food and enjoy on the day of Eid. You're enjoying, you're eating food, but the poor people don't, because they don't have food. It's a means for them to also eat food on the day of Eid. No. So this is what the scholars they say is the hikmah behind why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it legislated Zakatul Fitr. That's the hikmah. So what's Zakatul Fitr? What do I do? How much is it? Who do I give it to? Number one is the miqdar, the amount that you have to give. How much do you give of Zakatul Fitr? The how? It's صاعًا من الطعام. It's a صاع, one صاع. What's one صاع? A صاع is a means of calculation. It's a means of calculation. And it's not weight. It's a means of calculation in volumes and space. So it's not a means of calculation in terms of grams or kilograms or pounds. It's a place that something occupies, a space, and it's called sa'. And sa', the scholars, they approximate it and they give an approximation and they say it's approximately 3 or a little bit less than 3 kgs of rice. That's what they say. That's how much it is. Less than 3 kgs of rice, approximately, here or there. And the scholars, they say, or if you want to be more specifically, you can say it's 2 kilograms and 40 grams of al-burr al-jayyid, is wheat that is good quality. But that's why I said approximately it's less than, or a little less than, I should say, than 3 kgs of rice. Okay, so this is how much it is. This is the weight of how much it is. And it's something that you have to give out in food. Are you allowed to give this thing to the poor people in money? So you calculate how much 3 kgs of rice is, or 3 kgs of dates, and you take that and you give it to the poor people. Let's say you calculate it's going to cost you 70 pounds for 3 kgs, or 170 pounds. So you go to a poor person and you give them 170 pounds cash in their hand. Naqdan. Are you allowed to do this? The scholars say no. You have to give it food. Ta'am. You have to give it food. You have to give it from what type of food? They say the ta'am of the people, the qutul balad. What your people eat. The people of your country, what's their staple food? If the staple food of your country is rice, you go, you grab, or you buy 3 kgs of rice and you give it to the poor people. If it's dates, you go get 3 kgs of dates and you give it to the people. If it's wheat, you go, you buy 3 kgs of wheat, you calculate it, you give it to poor people. Does that make sense for everyone? No. Now, if you give more than 3 kgs, the excess is charity. The excess is charity. The extra money is charity. The extra money is charity. So you give it. So the scholars, they say, because if you calculate this specifically is 2 kgs and 40 grams, when you give it, you intend zakatul fitr, and the excess you have an intention that's going to be charity. So whatever you give extra, let's say a person is generous, they go and they give 10 kg. The 3 kg is going to be your zakatul fitr covered. The 7 kg, it's just charity. It's excess charity. But you have to give what? 3 kg zakatul fitr. And you have to give it from the staple food of the people of your land. Like we said, this staple food, the qut of the balad, it differs from country to country. In some places, rice is the staple food. For example, in Saudi Arabia, rice, that's the staple food. Everybody eats rice. In other countries, it could be dates. In other countries, it could be anything else. It goes back to the staple food of the country. What's the regular thing that they eat? Who do you give it to? The fuqara and the masakin, the poor people. Is there a difference between a faqir and a miskin? Yes, there is. But this is not the place for us to discuss it. A poor person, you give it to them. And a poor person here means a person who's very poor. Either they don't have enough food for that night, so they don't have enough food or essentials or the essential household items for that night, or a person who has it for that night but not for the whole year. He has it for that one night but not for the whole year. So he's a poor person. You give it to them. Who has to give it? It's wajib on who? It's wajib on every single one. على من غربت عليه الشمس آخر يوم من رمضان وهو مسلم. Everyone, when he reaches, anyone who reaches Maghrib time of Ramadan, of the last day of Ramadan, and is a Muslim. So we say anyone. And highlight anyone. Anyone who reaches the last day of Ramadan, or the Maghrib time of Ramadan, and is a Muslim. So let's say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. There's a person, he's a Muslim, 29th Ramadan, decides to leave the fold of Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Does this person, when it comes ending of Ramadan, does this person have to give zakatul fitr? No. Why? Because he's not a Muslim. He's not a Muslim now. Also, the scholars, they say, this is one of the conditions. The other condition is he has a excess of 1 sa' from his food and children's food and household essentials. As the scholars, they say, al-hawa'ij al-asliya. This is what they call it, yeah? So anyone who the first condition applies to, plus the second one, which is they have a excess, a fadl, a excess. So they have extra food in their house with the amount of 1 sa'. So they themselves have 1 sa' of extra food. So it's not food they need for that night, but it's extra food they need. Now this extra excess of 1 sa' on day/night of Eid. Okay. So when the day he has enough food, which is how much is 1 sa'? So he has 1 sa', which is 3 kg of food that is excess, that's extra. So it's not something he needs for the same night, it's extra. And when is it? It's enough for him to last the day and the night of Eid. And it's food that is for him and for his children and anyone who he's dependent on, so or dependent on him. So he has enough for his wife, enough for his children. If he has more than one wife, he's enough for all of them. He has enough, plus he has this extra 1 sa', extra one, which is extra 3 kgs of food. And he also has enough من الحوائج الأصلية, from enough of his household essentials. What do we mean by this? He has enough money to pay his electricity, his water, and let's say from the حوائج الأصلية, things that you need that are staple nowadays, is a fridge. He has a fridge, meaning he has all the essentials that you need. And some even scholars even say nowadays internet is an essential. If he's a person who has work, so he's barely paying his internet fee. So if he pays zakatul fitr, he's not going to be able to pay internet fees. Scholars say you don't have to pay zakatul fitr. Again, anybody who fulfills all of these conditions, only then zakatul fitr is wajib. And it's not hard. And when we said anyone, meaning everyone, old, young, woman, man, child, everyone has to pay. Any country has to pay, as long as they fulfill these conditions. Does everybody understand them? We'll come to when you have to pay it. But does everybody understand the conditions when they become wajib? Or what's something you didn't understand? What if he dies after Maghrib? After Maghrib. So he's reached Maghrib. Allahu alam, la adri. You don't know. If you're working and you don't fulfill the third condition, now, if you're working and you have money but you don't fulfill these conditions, you don't have to give them. Okay, let's repeat again. So condition number one is you reach the last day of Ramadan and you're a Muslim. That's one condition. You reach the last day of Ramadan and you're Muslim. Whether you fasted Ramadan or not, whether you were ill, you're diabetic or not, as long as you reach the last day of Ramadan, whether you're a woman or a man, you're young, you're a boy, before puberty, after puberty, you're 1 year old, you've reached the last day of Ramadan and you're a Muslim. That's one condition. Plus, and that's the condition that relates to you. Number two, the condition that relates to your money. How much wealth should you have? How much food should you have in your house? You have extra food, an excess of 1 sa', which is the 1 sa' that you're going to be giving to the poor person. So you have excess food. And when should you have this excess food? On the night, or this food should suffice you for the day and the night of Ramadan, of Eid. So it's enough food that suffices you for throughout the day and the night of Eid. And this 1 sa' is more than that. Is more than that. And the food that you have already suffices you, suffices your children. It's enough for your wife. You have all your essentials, everything is sorted. Plus you have this extra of 1 sa'. Those are the two. Okay, does it make more sense? Yeah, it's simple. It's not hard. It's not hard. And this is really, a lot of us fulfill this condition today. It might seem like a long condition, but it's every one of us fulfills this condition, almost everyone. Now, and in this case, we understand also, if you have a husband or a man, he has 1 wife and 4 children. The husband has to give it. The wife and the children, do they have to give it? Now, do the condition apply to them? Have they reached the last day of Ramadan and they are a Muslim? Naam. Do they have enough food in the fridge? Naam. So they have to give it. They have to give it. They have to give it. So they have to give it. The scholars say the husband is allowed to give it on behalf of the wife and the children, and it's not a problem. So the person who's in charge of the household is allowed to give it for the rest of the household. It's not a problem. So the husband can give it on behalf of his 1 wife and 4 children. If he has more wives, he can give it for all of them as well. Now, so you can give it on behalf of your dependents. And the scholars, they say, for the janeen, for someone who is, of the wife, she has a children or a child in her stomach, so it's in the womb. Should she give it for the one who's in the womb? The scholars, they say, yustahab, it's recommended. It's recommended. If you give it for the child who's in the womb, it's recommended. Now, when should you give this zakah? What's the timing to give? So we took how much it is, who it's wajib for, who does it go to, and how much it is, and when do you give it? So now the last question is, when do you give this zakah? There's three timings. There's a waqtul jawaz. There's a time that is permissible for you to start to give this money. That's number one. Number two is waqt al-istihbab. There's time that is preferred for you to give it at this time. Number three is a waqt al-tahrim. The waqt is haram for you to give it after this time. So you're not allowed to give it after this time. The time that it's permissible, or when can you allowed to start giving this money, is the 29th and the 30th of Ramadan. So before the day of Eid by 1 or 2 days, which is the 29th or the 30th of Ramadan, you can start to give this money out. It's not a problem. It's permissible. It's allowed. But it's better for you to give it when? Before the Salah of Eid. Before the Salah of Eid, but after the Salah of Fajr. You have the Salah of Fajr that comes first, and then you have the Salah of Al-Eid. Between the Salah of Fajr and Eid, this is the best time to give it. Between the time of after Fajr and before the Salatul Eid, this is the best time to give it. But if you reach a point after Salatul Eid, this is now called Waqtul Tahrim. It's haram for you to give it at this time. It's haram to give it at this time means you're sinful for giving it and delaying it at this time. If you reach this point, it's sinful. Should you still give it out anyways? The scholars, they say if you give it out, it's not going to be considered as Zakatul Fitr. It's going to be a normal charity. And your opportunity for doing Zakatul Fitr has gone by. Your opportunity for giving Zakatul Fitr has gone by. And if you give it after the Salah of Eid, it's a normal sadaqah. It's normal charity. You get rewarded for it, but you have not fulfilled Zakatul Fitr. So again, to summarize, three timings. Timing that is permissible or you're allowed to give it, which is the timing of 1 or 2 days before Eid, which is 29th or the 30th of Ramadan. You can start to give it at this time. If you give it, it's accepted from you. If you give it, and the best time to give it is when? Between the Fajr time and Salatul Eid. After the Fajr Salah, but before the Salah of Eid. This is the best time to give it. And if you delay it after Salatul Eid, it's the Waqtul Tahrim. It's the time that is haram, and you get sinful for giving it, and it's not accepted as Zakatul Fitr. It's accepted as charity. Does that make sense for everyone? Can you pay it during Ramadan if someone else goes to buy it on the 29th or 30th? So here's an important point. We've established you have to give this as food and not money. As food and not money. And you have to make sure, even if you do wikala and you give it to somebody else, or you what's the word for it? You I don't know what the word for wikala is. Now you make somebody do it on your behalf. So you you appoint someone on your behalf. So you appoint, let's say, a person, and you say, Ya akhi, give this, I'll give you the money, you're giving it anyways, can you give it on my behalf as well? You have to make sure that it's been given on the 29th or 30th or before the Salah of Eid. You have to make sure it's reliable, etc. And they give it on the correct timing. Not that you pay for it to that brother on that day. This applies to organizations, masajid, they all collect it, but you have to make sure they are doing it and they are giving it out, number one, as food, not money, as food, and number two, to the right people, and number three, at the right timing. So you have to make sure it's the right timing. Now, if that made sense. Now, and you cannot give money equivalent. You cannot give it nuqudan. You cannot give it as money, as we established. You have to give it as food. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Zakat is طعمة للسائم, is طعمة للمساكين." It's a food to the poor people. He didn't say it's money to the poor people. He said it's food. That's what the scholars say. You have to give it as food and not money. No. And nowadays there's organizations reliable. They give it to you, etc. How does the woman and child give it? If they have the money, they collect it and they collect the food for it and they give it to the poor people. And really, this is something that you should really instill in your children. If you have children, you make it a habit, an enjoyable moment for them, and you gather your family together. You bring a big sack of. This is how my father used to do it. He used to collect a big sack of rice. This is back in the day before he got old. Collect a big sack of rice, bring a sa' measurement, a way to measure it. We put it in bags, and we go out with our own hands and give it to poor people. And this way, you never forget it. That's why I've never forgotten how you do it, who it goes to, because there's a habit. When you're young, you're grown onto, or you're given this habit of giving it. You know how much it is. You know who it's given to since you're young. Since you're young. Now, even if you're just a mother and children, the mother goes buys some rice, shows the measurement, calculates it. Even if she's not calculating in sa', she's calculating it in weight, 3 kg, put it in bags. Go to the next closest poor person, give it into their hands. And that's the best way to do it, is to give it yourself. So you go out of this line of, maybe it's given in time, is it not given in time? So give it yourself and you're more certain that way. So let's go to the last point, inshallah ta'ala. We have another 15 minutes and we'll discuss Salatul Eid. Salatul Eid. After you've given your Zakatul Fitr. After you've given Zakatul Fitr, which is given before Eid. You pray the Eid Salah. The Eid Salah, is it something everyone has to pray? Is it fardu ayn or fardu kifaya? Is it obligatory, like every single one has to pray it? Or if somebody gives it or prays it in the community, it suffices for everyone. It's a communal obligation. The scholars, they differ. And the scholars, and a lot of the scholars, they take the view that it's fardu aynin. Some of them, they say it's fardu kifaya. So if a group of people pray it, it suffices. And the khilaf of the scholars is considered in this, inshallah. But you should try your best to pray it anyways, just so you can stick out of the difference of opinion. In case it's fardu ayn and you have to pray, you've already prayed it anyways. And you get rewarded for doing so, so you should pray it. When do you pray it? When does the time start? It's definitely after Fajr. When the sun goes up, qida ramhin. What does it mean? When the sun goes up in the sky, qida ramhin. The length of a spear. Does everybody know what the length of a spear is? MashaAllah. Now, this is ma'ruf, the people know it. So for you, whenever the salah timing is announced to you, know that's the timing for Eid. Generally, 1 or 2 days before Eid, it's announced what the timing is, so you will know what the timing is. They'll calculate it for you, your local masjid, they will know what the timing is. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to do your own calculation. But this is the time, when the sun is in the sky at the length of a spear, until az-zawal, until midday. That's the beginning time and that's the ending time. If you miss Salatul Eid, can you make up for it? Can you pray it by yourself? No. If you miss it out, you cannot make up for it and pray it by yourself. And the sunnah and the origin of praying Salatul Eid is, where do you pray it? Kharij al-bunyan. is you pray it outside the building areas. You pray it in the outskirts of the city. As the scholars, they say, في الصحراء, in the open areas outside the city. So you don't pray it in a city. But it's allowed for you to pray it in the masjid. يجوز في المسجد. If you pray it in the masjid, it's allowed, it's accepted. But the sunnah and the origin of it is you do it out in the public, in an open place. As-sahra is a word that refers to an open place. That's why the desert is called as-sahra, because it's an open place. It's a wide open place. What's the sunnah for Eid? What's the sunnah for Eid? The sunnah for Eid, there's many. This is not where we can go into detail, but from it is you eat odd dates before. So before you go to the salah, you eat odd dates. Also, you take ghusl, you perfume yourself, you wear your best clothing. Because Eid is a day of celebration, so you perfume yourself, you clean yourself, you do ghusl, and you wear your best clothing. And the sunnah is also when you go to the masjid or you go to the place of Eid Salah, you go from one way and you come back through a different way. Come back from a different way. This is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, the scholars say, لا بأس في, there's no problem in greetings. If you greet somebody for Eid, it's not a problem. You say, تقبل الله منا ومنكم. You say, تقبل الله منا ومنكم. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and from you. You can greet people, it's not a problem. And at the time of Eid, you also have the takbirat. You say Allahu Akbar. You saying this is a part of the rituals of Eid. And the scholars, they divide the takbirat into two types. There's mutlaq and muqayyad. The mutlaq is when you say it unrestrictedly. And it starts from when the sun setting on the day of Eid until the Imam comes on the minbar. The last day from Maghrib time. So Maghrib time, so Ramadan has finished, the day of Eid has started, and in our religion, the day starts from Maghrib. So from Maghrib time of the day of Eid until the Imam, he comes to the Salah. Until the Imam, he comes to the Salah. This is mutlaq. This is when you do the takbir, you say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, wa lillahi alhamd. This is one of the ways to say it. So you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illa Allah. You say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, walillahi alhamd. That's the standard format. And any other formats that have come from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can say it. Anything that is authentic narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you can say it. This is not just the only way of saying it. There's many other ways you can say it. So this is the unrestricted, which is you say it from Maghrib time on the day or the night of Eid until the Imam comes to the minbar. And there's restricted ones, which is you say it in the 3 days of Eid after the fard salawat, after the obligatory prayers, the 5 daily prayers. You say it after that. And you don't say it in congregation. But if it happens to be congregated together, then you do it, no problem. But you don't intentionally congregate and make this takbir together. This is the type that is muqayyad. Okay? and the Salah of Eid. How do I pray the Salah of Eid? In Eid, it's the other way of, or the opposite way of Jum'ah. Jum'ah, what happens first? The khutbah happens first, then the Salah. In Eid, the Salah comes first. You pray the Salah first, then there's a khutbah, then there's a sermon. It starts with the Salah first. You pray first, then the Imam gets up and does the sermon. And it's not wajib for you to attend the sermon, but you should. It's not wajib for you to attend the sermon, but you should. If you leave after the Salah, your Salah is accepted. The Salah, how do you pray the Salah? 2 rak'ah. It's 2 rak'ah that you pray. 2 units, just like Fajr, but it's slightly different. In the first rak'ah, you'll have the first takbir, which is called the takbiratul ihram, plus 6 more takbirat. So you have the first one, the opening takbir, plus 6 more takbirat. So the Imam will say Allahu Akbar to start the Salah. Then he will add another 6 takbirat, and you say Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, 6 times. And the scholars, they say you can raise your hands with every takbir and you can leave it down as well. It's not a problem. And the second rak'ah is the same. When the Imam, he gets up and he does the takbiratul intiqal, when he gets up and he says Allahu Akbar, besides that takbir of Allahu Akbar of the intiqal, there's 5 more takbirat. The one takbir is for the movement, for you getting up from sujood, getting up for prostration. You say Allah, the Imam says Allahu Akbar, and then the Imam, he will say another 5 takbirat, and you follow them. So you don't have to remember all of this because the Imam is going to do it. But just so you know, so you don't get confused and you don't forget and how it's prayed. But you follow the Imam. So you have to pay attention. So if the Imam says Allahu Akbar, you don't just go in sujood or something like that. So you follow the Imam. Now, and you recite everything normally as well, inshallah. So this is how you pray Salatul Eid. This is how you pray Salatul Eid, inshallah ta'ala. And there's many more things that we can say about Eid, about Zakatul Fitr, about fasting. But bidnillahi ta'ala, I'll stop here for now, inshallah ta'ala. And we'll have another 5 minutes. So if anybody has any questions, anything you didn't understand, anything you want me to repeat, any feedback, did you find the seminar or the workshop of benefit? Do you think it was useful? Do you think it was good as one? Do you think you should have had 2? Let me know, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallahu khairan for attending and giving me the time. Okay, bismillah. So we'll only take questions for another 4 minutes and then we'll stop, inshallah. Anything that I know and have the knowledge of. Do you get sins for the nawaqid or only if you don't make up for nullifying the fast? Allahu a'lam, la adri. I do not know. That's a good question. Jazakallahu khairan. There are elders who fast and they have diabetes. Is that okay? Or do they still have to pay sadaqah? No, if they fast, they don't have to pay anything. Those who don't fast, then they have to pay. But if they have diabetes, and I know many people that have diabetes and they're old and they still insist to fast. Number one, if you don't have the health, you shouldn't force yourself to fast. Especially somebody who has diabetes and it's dangerous for them, you shouldn't fast. And this falls under the ayah of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, don't throw yourselves with your own hands ila tahluka, to destructions. So don't destroy yourself with your own hand. But if they have the ability and they have diabetes and they are old, but they still have the ability to fast and it has no effect on their health, it does not affect their health, then they do not have to make up for it because they fasted and they don't have to pay or to feed the poor for every day they've missed. And you only have to feed the poor if you've missed that day because of not fasting. Now, the rice does not have to be cooked. Now, if you give the rice as sadaqah, it's not something that is cooked. As the scholars, they say, it should be salihatun lil-iddikhar. It should be something that can save for another day. There's something that you can save, so it shouldn't be cooked. You just raw rice in a packet and you give it like that. That's if the food of your country is rice. If it's something else, it's something else. Salatul Eid for women, yes. Women can pray Salatul Eid and it's not a problem. It's not like Jum'ah. How much rak'ah do you pray for Taraweeh? You follow the masjid, the imam of your masjid. You follow the imam of your masjid. If the imam of your masjid prays 11, you pray 11. If he prays 21, you pray 21. You follow the imam of your masjid. Because based on the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is man qama ma'al imami hatta yansarif. Whoever prays with the imam until the imam leaves. It's as if you've prayed for the whole night. So whatever the imam prays until the imam leaves, you pray. So you can get the reward of praying the whole night. Ma'am. And Allah knows best. Does taking vaccinations break your fast? Allahu a'lam. La adri, do not know. Somebody has sent 6 questions. I'm not going to answer all 6 because that would be unfair for everyone. We'll try my best. Is ability to fast considered if you are poor and they barely have the possibility to get food or drink during iftar time? Like we said, it's wajib upon you to fast as long as you fulfill the 6 conditions that we mentioned. It's wajib upon you. Number 1, if you're a Muslim, you have intellect, you've reached a bulugh, you've reached puberty, and you're a resident, you have the health, and you have the ability, and you're free from al-hayd wa nifas, you have to fast. Yeah. That's wajib for you to fast. Yeah. How can we receive recording of this workshop? Inshallah ta'ala, contact the organizers of the event and they will let you know. Bi'idhnillah al-kareem. Is Zakatul Fitr compulsory? Yes, it's wajib. It's wajib with the conditions. Like we said, anybody who reaches the last day of Ramadan and is a Muslim and has enough food for the night and the day of Eid and the essentials has to fast, has to give Zakatul Fitr. Everyone, whether old or young or boy or girl, married, non-married, all of them. What happens to someone who has reflux and swallows the vomit while fasting? Allahu a'lam, la adri. I do not know. So for the second rak'ah, so first rak'ah is the takbiratul ihram, the first takbir, plus 6 more takbirat on top of it. The second rak'ah is the takbiratul intiqal. When you get up from the intiqal and you say Allah, the Imam says Allahu Akbar, the Imam is going to add another 5 takbirat on top of it. So follow the Imam, inshallah. The staple food that you give for Zakatul Fitr is the food. You don't have to cook it, no. Just give it raw. Because the purpose of Zakatul Fitr is they can take that money and keep it for the rest of the year. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop here for now. Any questions that you have, like I said, there's many questions, but any questions that you have, please join the lesson with Ustadh Abdul Rahman Hassan, and he is somebody who has more knowledge and he'll be able to answer your questions, inshallah ta'ala. Anything good that I said is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Any mistakes, any shortcomings, any faults is from me and shaitan. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to reach Ramadan and benefit. And don't forget to make dua for me and my family this Ramadan. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruhu wa atubu ilayh. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.